Jimmy Garoppolo seemingly staying with the 49ers in 2022. This I did not see happening. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In this episode, we are, of course, going to be talking about the massive news that dropped today that Jimmy Garoppolo has signed a new one-year deal to remain with the team. Before we get into all the details, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who stops by the streams, likes, watches the video, comments on the videos. It really means a lot to me, it means a lot to the channel, and it helps me out tremendously, and it's just great to see the channel grow. So thank you very much. But now let's jump into the video talking about Jimmy Garoppolo's new deal with the 49ers. Alrighty, so the first thing I want to talk about with regards to this is the numbers. So it's basically reworking the last year of his deal. So it's a one-year deal. It's for $7.6 million, 6.5 of which is guaranteed. Ultimately, Jimmy Garoppolo's cap hit for the 2022 season is going to be $8.94 million. Now, when we actually look at the team as a whole, now the 49ers have $21.3 million in cap space, which I believe puts us in the top 5 for cap space in the NFL. And this is really good for two reasons. Number one, if we need to make a mid-season trade, let's just say, for example, if we want to beef up the offensive line, or if we need to add a weapon, whether that's on offense or defense, we can do that because we have the cap space to do that. But not only that, let's just say if we don't make a mid-season trade, which could take up a decent amount of cap space, is we can actually carry a lot of that money over to next year. And of course, we're going to have some big signings to make in terms of keeping Bosa long-term, maybe starting the negotiations with a guy like Brandon Ayuk, or some of the players that we have on the last year of their deals. So overall, I think this is a very solid move when you look at it strictly from a numbers perspective. But now let's just jump into the thoughts that I have about this signing. So initially my thoughts were kind of a little bit scattered. So what I did was I essentially wrote out like a number of points that I wanted to talk about. So the first thing that actually came to mind was, what does this mean for our backups, Nate Sudfeld and Brock Purdy? Well, with Sudfeld, we know that he is guaranteed $2 million this year. So I think that it's very, very possible and probable maybe at this point that we actually keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. I think regardless of this move or not, Brock Purdy was going to be cut and essentially moved to the practice squad, which I think will very much benefit Purdy. And I think it's going to be a case of, I don't really necessarily believe that another team is going to put in a waiver claim on a guy like Brock Purdy simply because of where he was drafted, and his performance was okay, but it's nothing like, it wasn't lighting the league up by any means. So that was the first thing. I do believe at this point, I'd probably say it's more likely that we keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster. And I'm really going to explain why in the next point that I want to talk about, which is, could Jimmy Garoppolo still get traded? So yes, he could potentially still get traded. And the big thing here, though, is with this new deal is that there is a no trade clause. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's impossible for him to get traded, but essentially what it means is that Jimmy Garoppolo would have to approve any trade. And I think in order for that to happen, it would need to be a pretty darn good situation, ideally where he's going to play, and if the team is seemingly going to be competitive, or really it comes down to what matters to him the most, whether it's playtime or whether it's a competitive team. But ultimately, it's probably going to rely on some team starting quarterback getting hurt for that to happen. Now, I don't know if he actually will get traded. Yes, is it a possibility? But we really know that it takes quarterbacks a while to get, if they get traded, they can't just jump into a game right away. There's just so many different aspects to come down to, getting the offense down, getting the chemistry down, familiarity with the coaching staff, all these other things. So I think as time goes on, it's less and less likely that it happens, but that's not to rule it out. So there is a possibility that he can get traded, but of course, Jimmy would actually have to agree to it. The Niners just couldn't be like, hey, we'll trade you to, Atlanta for whatever pick, and you're just going to have to go to Atlanta. He would actually have to approve any trade that happens. So the situation would have to be good for Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, here are some other questions that I really had to ask myself, and ultimately, does this move make the team better? And I think absolutely on paper, the team is better with Garoppolo as the backup. I think we've seen what we can do with Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, we made it to a Super Bowl, an NFC Championship game, but I think it's a stretch to say that it was necessarily because of him. I think, the defense has always been great whenever we've made it far. The running game has been very effective too. But overall, I feel a lot better having Garoppolo on paper as the backup to Trey Lance as opposed to Nate Sudfeld or Brock Purdy, who are essentially unknowns with regards to playing consistently in the NFL regular season. So overall, yes, I think the team is better. Now, the big question that we have to ask ourselves, and this also ties into is the team better, is the fact that how does Trey Lance respond to this? It can go one of two ways. Either he rises to the occasion and this really pushes him and motivates him to be the best that he can be. Not that he necessarily needs the motivation, because I think he's very highly self-motivated, but it really will push him to excel. Or could this backfire and could the pressure get to him? Now, normally I would, and I do feel very confident in Trey Lance that he won't be negatively affected by this, but we do have to remember that there are going to be some games that, are going to be rough. He's a very young quarterback. He's only 22 years old, and he hasn't played a ton of just live football the last couple of years. So I think the big thing here is, what will the leadership look like in the team? Will the team be able to rally around a guy like Trey Lance? If the team struggles and maybe loses a bad game, maybe they lose a game that we are expected to win. Maybe Trey Lance has a couple of bad plays that causes the loss. Just throwing, of course, like hypotheticals out there. But how does the locker room respond, and how does the team respond? And ultimately, I believe in a lot of the veteran leadership in the locker room. Trent Williams, Fred Warner, George Kittle. Now, to me, what this move means is I think if Trey Lance struggles in some games, I think these guys are going to have his back. Not only that, we know that Kyle Shanahan earlier in the offseason had mentioned, look, this is Trey Lance's team. So I think that the idea that people are like, is this going to be Garoppolo's team if he comes back? I think that's not a huge concern, but really is like mentally, like how does Trey Lance respond when he struggles somewhat? And here's the big thing when it comes to what's going to happen there is, well, how does Jimmy Garoppolo, what is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be like in the locker room? You know what I mean? So it comes down to as well, I think that by all accounts, ever since he's come to San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo has been a great teammate. Sure, it seems like in the offseason, he ignores phone calls and whatnot apparently, but ultimately in the locker room, everyone just raves about how great of a teammate is. And there's a really famous thing, and I'm going to put in like the little clip of it here, but Trey Lance talking about how to him, Jimmy Garoppolo is like a big brother to him.
Well, like I said, I've never had anything I could possibly say that's bad about Jimmy. I mean, he's been a big bro to me since the day I came in.
And I really mean that, and I think we could see that. You can just genuinely see by body language that those guys genuinely liked and respected each other last season. And I think that will continue on this year as well. I'd like to believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a guy who, if Trey Lance is struggling, I think he's going to be there to help him out. Jimmy Garoppolo gains nothing by knocking Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo, he has to know that he is not the future of this franchise. If he wants to be on this team, and clearly he does, and that's why he reworked this deal. But if he wants the team to succeed, he has to know that he is here to help Trey Lance as well. And of course, he's here to help the team should Trey Lance miss any time through injury or what have you. So there's a lot of different factors, and I know it's a bit of a rant and a bit of a ramble, but I've tried to keep it somewhat together. But really just to, sum it all up, I think this is a good move for the team, because it gives us flexibility with regards to the cap. It means that Jimmy Garoppolo could also still be traded. We now have until week 8 to make a trade if we need to or want to, if a team comes calling. So that is still a possibility. But in the meantime, we have arguably the best backup quarterback in the NFL, a guy who's a great locker room guy, who I think is really I do believe this, that he will help our young quarterback, franchise quarterback, Trey Lance, when there's rough times and tough games and what have you. But also, we have that should Trey Lance get hurt, that we have this great backup quarterback to come in and who's proven with the 49ers who can win us games. So overall, I really can't complain about this. Now, I think from like a bit of a selfish aspect, I'm not going to enjoy reading Twitter and these people arguing about Trey Lance and Jimmy G for the next, 7-8 months. But at the end of the day, what matters most to me is what's good for the 49ers, and I think this is good for the 49ers. So I'm going to leave it there. Those are my thoughts. Sorry if it was quite incoherent, but, I'm just kind of reacting to all this news and trying to let my thoughts sink in. But do let me know your guys' thoughts, of course, in the comments. This could lead to some really, really good, respectful conversations and discussions and debates surrounding this whole scenario. But thank you very much for stopping by, guys. I really do appreciate all the support that you guys show the channel. So it means the world to me. And I'm going to say two things. The butt counts, and I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side.